Alright, let's get started. So today I want to finish up these blocks, just doing what I've been doing with cracks, surface noise, and then cleaning them up and just kind of finalizing them. So let's start with adding some more cracks. So orb cracks, drop the size down. Let's find a good place to put it. Maybe on this corner down here. Tablet's acting a little funny here, so I'm just unplugging it real quick. Well, that's interesting. Gonna close zBrush real quick. It's acting like I'm holding down the Alt key or something. I was actually rotating the model when I was trying to draw on it. Just let that open back up. It takes a minute because it's such a large model. Alright, there we go. And just set my stuff back, brush, tablet pressure size, drop that down, then we'll go to stroke, lazy mouse, set that to about 55. And just like always, we start with the orbs crack, sort of get the pattern that we want, then we'll come back in with our polish brush and our trim smooth border and kind of make it look a little bit more realistic. And grab our pinch brush, which I don't think I've actually, never mind, there it is. I'll just kind of pinch that damage back in. If you get too much pixelation in there because your thing isn't super high, resolution, you can kind of smooth that out a little bit. Then come in with a kind of small orbs crack and then just kind of clean that crack back out, sort of like this. so you don't get as much pixelation on the rest of it. You'll get some, but so I think that looks pretty good, and when we apply our noise to this, it's going to clean up some of that pixelation as well, so we don't have to worry too much. I wouldn't spend a whole long time, because, you know, with something like this, if you zoom in, say like this, okay, yeah, you can notice some pixelation in here, but when you're working on, say, like a game, or portfolio, or a piece or something, you know, you have to think about what are the chances the player is going to have their face in this close. So if the player is only going to be, say, here, then maybe this is as close as they can get to it, and they can't see any of that pixelation, then, you know, there's really no reason to spend time trying to fix it because they can't see it anyways. I just want to rough this up a little bit because the smooth made it a little too pillowy and I don't want that. You know, something like this that's cracked is going to have some hard edges on it because the stone is chipped away. So I kind of want to come in and just make that a little bit more noticeable in here. And then same thing over here. Okay, that looks a little bit better. It's got a harder edge in there, which will pick up on the normal map better than having that soft edge. Hey, donkey. This is part of a larger piece. It's actually a pillar. I would turn the whole thing on, but it tends to crash my computer when I turn the whole thing on, so I'm working on it in sections right now. But it's a stone pillar that's going in an environment that if you look at the poly count link in my sort of little boxes below, you'll get to see the whole scene that it's going into. It's going to be an Unreal 4 engine scene. So I'm going to go ahead and add some surface noise to this. I'm actually going to save it first. Let's add some noise. Let's go to our morph target first. Let's store this as a morph target in case we need to go back. And we're going to go to our surface or noise. And I'm just going to open that same one I've been working on. Hit OK. I'll apply that. We'll get that nice deformation. And you can see how applying that kind of changes the edges as well, which is nice. But that's obviously way too strong, so we'll go back to our morph target and we'll pull this over. And generally about 90 is good. And you can see what that noise does, especially like right here, how it kind of tightened that edge up, which is really nice here. And it's cleaned up that pixelation as well. So it's kind of roughed it up to the point where you can't see it anymore. And it's kind of crisp and hardened all these edges as well, so they've got that little nice white highlight. If we go into our one here, you can see how that edge is nice and sharp. The edge here is nice and sharp, so that will really play into the normal map really well. Just gonna save it again. Then I'm going to grab our concrete brush. If I can find where it went. Oh yeah, that's right, I reopened zBrush, so it's not going to be there, so I'll just go back to my folder. I believe it's this one. We're going to lower the intensity down to about 3. Somewhere in there. We're just going to drag this out a little bit to get some extra roughness on that surface. Might be a little hard to see in the video, but it's just adding some speckled kind of detail to it. Then the last thing I do is I grab my move brush, and you know this is pretty flat right now. And if you look at, say, this one, it's got some areas that are kind of pulling out, and that's what I want to do here. The reason for that is when we do like our height map later, we want that sort of variation in height on the surface so that it catches those shadows nicely. Just gives it a little bit more realism. So now if we look, we can see how it kind of has these height variations in here, which is exactly what we want. Especially for a scene like the one I'm working on, which has really harsh lighting, you want this kind of interesting, look to it. And I do save quite a bit, so I do apologize for the length of how long it takes to save, but probably better than watching me redo it if it does crash on me. Alright, so let's move on to the next one. Now I probably won't be adding cracks to all of these. You want to kind of vary it, here and there so that they don't all look too busy. So let's see. Probably forgo any cracks on this one. I kind of like sort of the style it has, so I'm just gonna add the noise like we've been doing. So we're going to store a new morph target. We're going to go to our noise, just open that. This is why saving your noise out is really important, because you wouldn't want to have to go in and adjust that curve every single time. We'll apply that. Grab our concrete detail brush. And with these drag rack brushes, you can always hold Alt to kind of eat it into the surface rather than building on top of it, so it really just depends on what kind of look you're going for. But you can see saving that noise and just doing a quick, morph target on it, that you can really make it look a lot more interesting than, say, this one right here, which hasn't been done yet. for your move brush, you want to be careful about your focal shift. I generally keep it about 0 if you go too low. You can see that's what happens, and that doesn't look very right at all. And then if you go too high, you sort of get this much sharper peak coming up, so we don't really want that either. We want really subtle movements. You can see how we get that sort of shadow and height differentiation there. And honestly, when this thing gets baked down, it will probably just actually be a couple planes. So I'll cut the seam for the UV probably down one of these like this, and then it will just be 4 planes. I might do some small extra edge loops for maybe things like this where it kind of comes out and goes in a little bit, just to kind of interest up the surface, but we'll see what our poly count is at when we're working on the low poly. Good thing about working on a portfolio environment rather than a game environment is I don't really have to worry about poly count that much. I kind of want to add to this crack up here. I don't know how I feel about just this long slice. So I may add to that. So let's click on that one. And because we use that pinch brush to kind of squish it all back together later, I don't really worry about the size of it right now, because even if this looks too thick, you know, we'll be pinching it back together, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. So maybe we'll do one like that, and maybe we'll do, maybe this one's actually cracking right on the surface. So maybe something like that. And, you know, you can get kind of stylized with this a little bit. It really just depends on what, you know, you're going for. You're going for super realism, you're going for a more, you know, gamey type look. Really just depends on you. You can kind of chip away some of this. Make it look like this piece maybe took some damage. Maybe something hit it. And that's one thing that's really important, is you want to kind of come up with stories for your environment. You know, even if it doesn't belong in a game, it's kind of important to know the backstory of your environment that you're working on. I've been using zBrush heavily, I would say maybe 6 months. I kind of had to self-teach myself. I started in Mudbox because that's what they taught in the school I went to, and then I sort of started realizing that Mudbox really wasn't cutting it in a professional way, so I decided to kind of teach myself zBrush. So there's still quite a bit I don't know, still quite a bit I'm still learning, but yeah, I wouldn't consider myself an expert in ZBrush by any means. So I think that's good for that. I'm just gonna save it real quick. Now if you're going for more of like a, Blizzard-esque type look, something like WoW, you wouldn't actually generally kind of rough up the surface like that because their stuff tends to be very smooth. So you would kind of go with this more stylized look, down here rather than continuing on with it. So I'm going to store our morph targets, get our noise on there. Looks pretty good, I think. Actually, grab our pinch. Now for something like the pinch, if you just want it to affect sort of the inner crack, you'd make it much smaller. If you wanted to kind of pull all of it in, then you can make your brush much bigger. There, now let's delete that old empty, store this one. Now do our noise. I think that looks a lot better than just that one we had before. So we'll grab, I'm just going to save this again, just in case. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Do my best to answer them. I think that looks pretty good. Now we'll just finish up our move. Now you could get all super fancy in here and mask this out, separate them, and then kind of have them pulled out, and maybe this is all gone, or you could do lots of different stuff with it, but for what we're trying to do, I think this is plenty. Maybe on this one we'll add a small crack. And you don't want to go too crazy. You could put cracks on every single one of these, but what happens when you do that, it kind of gets too busy and you actually detract away from the work that you've done. If somebody who's looking at it has to look at every single block to see the crack work that you've put in, what happens is it just gets to be too much. So you want it to be there, but you don't want it to go overboard. A small one over here. Maybe we'll use this notch that's already here to kind of line that up. Something like that. Right. Bricks and things like that tend to crack. Let me just see where we are with our other one. Tend to crack at the areas where they're weakest, which generally is on the corners, because as you get closer to the center it gets stronger. And so these areas here where there's less surface tend to be the ones that break sooner. And then when something is sitting on top of it, all of the weight's kind of being pushed down to these sides too, so. Get our custom. My courses, well, I went to university, so it was a 4-year bachelor's course, and it kind of covered both fine arts and 3D art as well. So you kind of like do 2 years at the beginning of like art concepts and fine arts, where you're learning like, you know, color theory and perspective and all of that stuff, doing, you know, painting and drawing and sculpting by hand. Then once you're done with those, you can then sort of specialize what you want to do. So if you want to be an animator, you can go through that. If you want to do, you know, art like this, you can do that. If you want to do sound design, you can do that. I went the 3D artist route, so I got to learn, you know, Maya and Mudbox and all of those programs, Unreal Engine. You know, I would say it was good. I definitely liked my education, but there's really only so much a school can teach you in the 4 years you're there, you know, because you're taking those courses, but then you're also taking, you know, your math, your English, your science courses, all of that stuff. So you can't really teach somebody every program they need to know, every single thing that they need to know for this kind of career. So it's a lot of learning on your own as well. You know, there was a pretty big difference in quality from the people who spent a lot of time outside of classes kind of working on their own stuff versus the people who kind of only did what their class assignment was. But I mean, it's a good idea to go to school anyways, just because it looks so much better on your resume. Yeah, there's a couple of my friends got jobs, but more so in like architecture design rather than actual game design. But yeah, it's not an easy industry to get into by any chance. And you know, of course, you have those people who who went, you know, to learn game design, and they just wanted to be the people who sit in a room all day and come up with ideas and do nothing else. It's like, that job doesn't exist. Help if I actually applied my noise here instead of just randomly going through my morph target. Exactly. And you know, I had classes where you had to like give, you know, pitches and things like that and kind of pretend that you were in front of like investors. And it was always funny the amount of people who wanted to make like Skyrim 2.0, but you know, with a team of 4 people so that they could, you know, make millions of dollars themselves. And you're just sitting there going, it takes, you know, like a couple hundred people to make something like Skyrim, and it takes them years to do it. So seeing this one's probably the straightest. This side here is probably where I'll cut my UVs. So I don't want to, this side right here, it's probably where I'll cut my UVs. So I don't want any cracks or anything on that surface. Yeah, I really need to get to posting more on ArtStation. It's something I always forget to actually post to, but it seems like a great community over there. Especially seeing like I'm still just sort of getting into a lot of this stuff after I graduated. It's pretty intimidating when you see some of the work that people over on like ArtStation can do, and then you're like, well, here's mine. Then it's even better when it's somebody that's like, here's this amazing piece of art I did on my lunch break while I was eating. And it's something that would take you like weeks to do. Yeah, it's a great site. And I actually didn't discover it till maybe a couple months ago. I'd been solely on Polycount for so long, and then when I found ArtStation, I was like, wow, this is really cool. But I mean, I've been working pretty hard on trying to get my because most of the stuff in my portfolio right now is really old. I got a job, you know, right when I graduated, and it kind of like, you know, I kind of put all of this stuff on the back burner a lot, and my portfolio kind of suffered because of it. And now that I'm actively looking to get out of the job I'm working at, I'm realizing that my portfolio is really not up to par for applying to places. So I'm sort of like on this mad dash of getting it, you know, closer to what my actual skills are nowadays versus what they were. Yeah, so you're in the same boat, exactly. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, especially when you see some of these amazing portfolios that are out there. It's one of the reasons why I'm live streaming it. It keeps me focused on working rather than, you know, working on like one of these blocks and then going and browsing Reddit for an hour or something. So this side's kind of devoid of cracks, so I could add some more over here. This side only has the one. Don't know why this block's decided to hide itself. So let's see. So there is actually a whole, if we look at our subtool, I actually have a lot more on here. It's just for some reason when I show it all now, it locks up the machine. I don't know if there's like one bad subtool it doesn't like or something. so I'm just avoiding showing it all right now. But if you look in the YouTube links below, you'll actually see what the pillar actually looks like. Some of these programs haven't been functioning like normal since I upgraded to Windows 10, so... I'll crack up this one. Now, character retopo. Characters is like the one thing I tried it once. I did like this weird penguin type character bird thing in one of my classes, and that was like, I had to model it, rig it, and animate it, and that was enough for me. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna stick to environment art. I had to like animate its eyes and everything, and its eyes were like bulging out of its skull, and that was my foray into character design first and last time. It's live. I'm working on it right now. Yeah, I'm not a fan of rigging or animating too. It's just, it's so tedious, and like, it requires somebody who's really good at it. And you know, animations are like so important to the foundations of a game that if you don't do it right, like, it ruins everything. I forgot to take that off, sorry. Click that. I don't really look at my OBS once I get started, so I just forgot to take that off. But yeah, rigging, animating, not something I touch. I'll let somebody who's far better than me go ahead and worry about that. What do you mean by click? Like, get, you know, a sort of foothold in what you're doing in it. Yeah, ZBrush I have a love-hate relationship with. Like, I love what it can do. I thoroughly hate how it's designed. Like, I'm fairly certain that the person who made the entire UI in ZBrush secretly hates humanity and wants everybody to suffer. Because they literally like took sort of how all other programs work and then completely reversed it. Nah, I believe anybody can learn any of these programs. It's just, you know, the amount of time it takes. Yeah, you always want, you always want an idea of what you want to do before you start. At the same time, start small. A lot of people tend to jump into programs like this, never having used them, and try to do too much. You know, like if your first ZBrush model is literally like a box with some stuff carved into it just so you can understand, you know, like the concepts behind everything, that's perfectly fine. Like I used to be really bad at, I'd pick up a program and then I'd be like, I'm gonna make this super duper awesome, you know, thing. And that I had no idea how to make. I had no business making because I had no idea how to make it. And I would start and then I would have no idea what I was doing, so I'd get super frustrated and I'd quit. Are you using a keyboard and mouse, or do you have a tablet? Because if you try to use a keyboard and mouse most of the time with ZBrush, you will go insane. Like, it's a program that is fundamentally built around using a tablet. Yeah, working from big to small it's a tough one because when you have an idea in your head, you always think of the little fine details. And so a lot of times you kind of want to jump to those and start with those rather than, you know, okay, I need to make this, so I've got to start with this and then work, you know, you're kind of working almost backwards from big to small. The biggest challenge whenever you come into like ZBrush, and this really applies to everything, is you kind of have to problem solve. You have to look at what it is that you want to create and then know the steps that you need to take in order to create it. You know, that's really the most important part. Once you get that down, then you can really do anything. Yeah, navigating in ZBrush is Like I said, I've got a love-hate relationship with it, so. Especially if you're, you know, like with me when I'm building, say like an environment, I'll have ZBrush open, I'll have Maya open, and I'll have Unreal Engine open. Maya and Unreal use pretty much the exact same, key bindings and shortcuts and all of that stuff. Navigation, and then there's ZBrush who's like completely opposite, so your brain's like spinning in this mode of Maya and Unreal, and you come into ZBrush and you're clicking like all the wrong things, and you're moving where you don't want to move, and yeah, really it's just, it's repetition is really all it is. It's just doing it over and over and over again until it kind of burns its way into your brain. Yeah, and the other thing is, don't be afraid to fail. If you get into something and you're working, you get to a point where all of a sudden you don't know what to do, or you screw it up royally, like that's fine, especially when you're just working on your own stuff, because then okay, I was able to do all of this stuff, and now I'm at a point where I don't know what to do, let me go learn how to do whatever I'm stuck on. Alright, then the next time when you go to make a similar model, you'll get past that point, and then you might get to something else and get stuck on that, and then you can learn that. And it's just, it's a constant building process, really. And you'll see that my interface is actually pretty customized. This isn't the default ZBrush interface, so I've got stuff down here. I hide all these side panels, so I've got my brushes up here. And I've got some materials up here. If you're looking at working in ZBrush quite a bit, I would recommend doing something like this because, like most programs, ZBrush has a lot of stuff for a lot of different types of artists. Being that I make all of my stuff solely for games and game engines and environments, I don't need 80% of what's in ZBrush, so there's no sense having it on my screen where I have to look at it if I'm never going to use it. So I've actually stripped away everything from my interface that I don't use on a constant basis, and I've just stuck with what I do. So like these brushes here, these are the brushes I almost use primarily. So anything that I use almost every time I model is here. I've got my, you know, what type of stroke that I want. I've got my alpha here if I need a texture. I've got my alpha 1 docked up here if I need it for anything. I've got my mats, you know, all of my sort of brush settings and stuff up here. This is all hidden, and then I've just got, you know, load open, all of that stuff, Dynamesh, and then I completely forgot that I actually put my MT stuff down here, but even I forget what's on my interface sometimes. Yeah, sculpting is a very imprecise kind of thing. But you know, it's important too to know, you know, sort of the correlation between things. So like when I was working on this, there was a lot of pixelation and stuff in here, and you'll see that I kind of ignored it. And then as soon as I dumped that noise on top of it, you know, that pixelation pretty much all went away. So it's knowing stuff like that too. You know, you're allowed to be imprecise at certain steps because other steps will come in and kind of fix it up for you. Yeah, the customization is worth it. My enjoyment in ZBrush went up about 100 times when I cleaned up the interface. The reason I leave ones like this so low is if we up it, I'll show you real quick, like it just gets to be too much. Now if you're going for something like that, you know, great, but for something like what I'm doing, that's too much. I will decimate it eventually. It's kind of gonna be a multi-step process with this being so high poly, but I actually use Decimation Master rather than zRemesh. zRemesh works a little bit better for characters or something that needs to get animated because it breaks it down into quads. For something like this, I don't really care if it's quads or not. It's going to be triangulated anyways because it's an environment prop. So I'll just Decimation Master it and let it build the low poly for me. What I'll probably do is, because everything is on its own subtool right now, I'll go back through when I'm done with everything and I actually do a Dynamesh first, so that way it breaks it down and keeps the topology clean. Once I've Dynameshed everything, I'll start merging them all together. Once they're all together, I'll Dynamesh them again to get rid of all the, because you can see, like, if I unhide this, you can see how, like, the, backs of these and the sides of these is all still here, even though I can only see the front. So the Dynamesh will help get rid of that. Then we'll do one final merge, Dynamesh everything so that everything's nice and clean, and then I'll do the decimation on it. It's kind of a weird multi-step process, but it tends to work pretty well. With only minimal cleanup needed in Maya afterwards. I don't really go through too much of a retopo. For environment art you get away with a lot because I don't really care what my topology is as long as it looks good. Like I said, it's not animating, it's not moving, so as long as I don't have any like super bad topology and everything is tried up nicely, then it's gonna be fine for me. As long as everything, you want to get some semblance of cleanliness on it, because otherwise your normals might not bake as well as you would like, but I don't go too crazy with it. But I do Dynamesh them down. The reason I Dynamesh it really isn't for the topology, it's so that I can get to a lower poly count, keeping the topology clean, but getting the lower topology count makes Decimation Master work a lot faster, rather than, there's a pretty big difference decimating a 5 million poly model than there is a, 500,000 poly model. I put it into Maya mainly because Decimation sometimes, it does a good job, definitely. Sometimes it can screw up the topology a little bit, so you'll get vertices that are maybe not merged together correctly. You'll get some vertices that are kind of inside out a little bit. So you kind of just want to go through it real quick, maybe spend like 5 minutes or so just checking on things like that, make sure that everything's welded together, make sure nothing's like, weird triangles are kind of coming out of nothingness. And then on top of that, depending on, this isn't going into a game. If it was going into a game, after I did my decimation, got the target that I wanted for the poly count, you can always reduce it somewhat in Maya as well, so you might be able to shave off, you know, 100 tries or something like that, just manually, then kind of merging and welding things. But I'll probably skip that step because I don't really care for a portfolio piece. Yeah, for the low poly, it'll probably just be it'll probably literally just be a couple planes with some beveled edges. I might do a little bit of extra edge loops for something like, where is it? This right here that kind of sticks out. I might have just like an edge that comes down, you know, goes across here, comes out here, and just pull that out slightly, just to give it a little bit more interest there, but we'll see how it bakes first. Not a really big deal if I don't do that. I'm just gonna add a small crack on this one. But I like to, you know, I like to plan while I'm building where my UVs are going to be. It's kind of an important step. When I first started like modeling and sculpting, I never pre-planned, and I'd always wind up into these issues where I'd get really bad seams in my models. So you quickly learn how to avoid things like that. Actually, I think this one's got enough detail in it. I don't want to add any more to it. Yep, once this high poly, you know, the high poly is what I'm working on right now. So once this is done, I'll export this as a single mesh out, you know, just out as an OBJ. Then I'll work on, you know, cleaning it up, decimating it down to get my low poly, which will be closer to, you know, 1.5, maybe 2,000 tries, somewhere around there. Then I'll clean that, you know, I'll clean up the low poly, make sure all the vertices are fine and all of that stuff. And then what I'll do is I'll unwrap that either in Maya or using like Hedis or something. And then once those are done, then I'll do work on the bake. Then for baking, I either use X normals or lately I've actually been using Substance Painter, and Painter has been working a lot better than X normals has, so that's been interesting. Oh, no problem. Keep the questions coming. Hedis is... Let me see if I can actually find... Or not. I'm not a huge fan of this Windows 10 search bar. So it's actually called UV Layout. I think like the actual brand name is Hedis, but it's basically... no, I don't want an update. It's basically a program, so let me see if I can load an OBJ in here real quick. It kind of has like this weird DOS kind of layout to it almost. I'm on my E drive, not that. So let's see, I think I have my rocks still here. Or not. And of course zBrush decides to come up with its stupid autosave in the background and probably crash my thing. Anyways, let's see what I can find for an export here. One of the fun parts about having a whole bunch of folders for a whole project is it really gets very lost in here. Alright, so if we open this up, it comes up in this window. Basically it's a tool that brings in your model like this, and then what you can do is you can hold the C key to cut. Like so. The yellow means that it's, you know, it's kind of like guessing where you want to put your cut for your UV seams. You can hit W to weld them back together, but basically you cut along where you know you want your UV seams to be, then you drop them in to a window, which doesn't actually exist because it doesn't have, let's see, I can use this one. Yeah, so it's not going to actually let me show it, but basically once you cut, you can split the faces apart and then you drop them into basically a 2D view, and you can do things like flatten and kind of, it has a bunch of mathematical algorithms built into it to kind of flatten your UVs so they don't like overlap, so that they get pretty even, you know, texel density between them and so on. So it's just basically a third-party UV unwrapper. You know, but I mean, if it's just something I use now and then. If it's a really complex piece, I tend to use it because it's just a little bit easier to see what you're doing rather than say Maya. But if it's something like this, then I'll just use Maya. Maya 2016's UV unwrap is pretty good. It's gotten a lot better than the old one was. UV unwrapping is by far my least favorite thing to do, so I'm not looking forward to that stage. It's my LT. I wasn't ready to spend the $3,500 or whatever it is on the full version. Oh, 29 bucks a month, a little bit easier to manage on the old wallet. Yeah, Moto's a program I've been interested in. I've heard a lot of good things about it from a lot of people, but from just having to use so many programs already, I wasn't ready to sit down and learn another one. Yeah, Substance is a great. I've got both Substance Paint. Well, I have the whole suite thing that they have for Substance Painter, Designer, and Bitmap to Image. Got that really sweet deal at Christmas when they had all three for like $100 for the whole package or something like that. Yeah, I've seen stuff from Cinema 4D, but I've never actually tried it myself. I've used because I got trained on Maya in school. It's kind of just been my go-to thing ever since then. I have used Max. After I graduated, I wanted to try Max because that seemed to be like what all the game designers were using, and I used it for a couple months and then went right back to Maya. I honestly get the impression that it really doesn't matter what you use anymore. They all seem to be able to do, relatively the same stuff. They're 1.5 million, so not much. What I do is just you know. Is it working okay? Or did it actually cut out? I have a tendency to let off my push to talk a little too quickly. Yeah, so what Morph Target does is it basically saves a snapshot of what the model, whatever subtool you have selected, looks like as soon as you hit Store Empty. basically just takes a snapshot of what it looks like. So whatever detail you have on there, whatever's in there then gets stored, basically. Then anything you do after the morph target has been stored, you can then go into your thing here, and you can move it back towards the snapshotted mesh versus what you've just applied to it after. So basically what I'm doing when I'm pulling it back to 90 is I'm going back 90% to what my stored mesh looked like, so that only 10% of that noise is then left on the model. And there's actually a brush too, so if you, this, puts it on the X, Y, and Z, so it will do the whole model. There's actually a brush in here as well, right here, this morph brush. I think that's it. There might be a different one. But basically, that will then do the same thing but on a brush level rather than doing the whole model at once. So it's a good way to kind of mix and match results like this, and then also if you're worried about something you're about to do screwing up your model, you can save that morph target, do your work, see how it looks, and then if you need to get rid of it, you can actually hit switch and it will go back to your old one. So it's just a nice way of sort of preserving your work before you do anything as well. But for something like that, that noise is way too rough, so I'd rather just back it down with the morph target afterwards. And this matte I keep applying, this one that sort of browns it out and has a nice harsh light, is a really good one for environment modeling because it casts really hard shadows. So you can see how well you're doing on your surface, if the lighting is going to be interesting when it hits your model and so on. This one doesn't actually come with zBrush, but you can download it off the Pixelogic website. It's just one of their extra ones, and it's just called OK Lunar Eclipse. But you can see how if I go to this one, it becomes kind of hard to see where the shadows are going to hit, but then as soon as I hit this, you can kind of see all the little details in there a lot better than you can on just that basic gray matte. But I do find this one a little bit hard to work in because you're casting a shadow on one half of your model. So that's why I generally work in the gray and then switch when I want to make sure everything's looking good. And you can see how quickly you can add that roughness and everything onto it, so it looks, you know, this is pretty flat. I mean, it looks okay, but this adds a lot more to it, and it really only takes a few seconds to kind of come in here, throw that noise on there, use a really quick drag rec brush, use the move tool a little bit, and you're pretty much done. You can move on to the next one. And you could always, you know, push it further too. I mean, there's hundreds of brushes out there that you could use depending on the look you're looking for. I mean, if you wanted this to be super roughed up and broken, you know, you could do that with lots of brushes. You know, if you wanted some patterns etched into the stone, you could do that as well. Really, it just depends on what you're going for. But I mean, really, it's just, you know, it's the same tricks and techniques, just, you know, depending on what you want to do. You know, for instance, oops, I didn't do that right. Let's say that I wanted to etch, you know, some, like a Gaelic symbol in there or something. It would literally be the same brush that I'm using for the concrete detail. You would just change this alpha here to, you know, the pattern that you wanted, and you would just drag it into the surface. And that would really be it. And using the move tool on the surface is mostly, it's for the normal map somewhat, but it's more for the height map when we get to baking out that in the end, because that will really show through in Unreal Engine, which does a really good job at height maps. And so it'll make the lighting a lot more interesting on the piece. But you don't want to go too crazy, like I don't want that, because that doesn't look right. So subtlety is key in a lot of this. If you go too much, then it winds up almost looking comical and unrealistic. Right, and it's going to be viewed, you know, the player is going to be beneath this, so it's going to be viewed more like this, or the player's kind of looking up at these, so that's important to think about too when you're working on something, is how is the player going to see it, because you can see that if I look at it like this, the shadows change versus if I'm looking at it like this. You could, I mean, you could add an alpha to multiples. I mean, you could merge this all together and just do this all at once, you know, if you wanted to, because it's so high poly that, you know, I didn't do that. And one of the reasons why these are broken up like this is I actually only sculpted 3 bricks and then duplicated them all around. So these are actually the same blocks, just repeated a whole bunch of times, flipped, rotated, you know, kind of scaled a little bit. These smaller ones up here are the same ones, just scaled down so that they fit into this top thing. There's a whole bunch more up here, they're just hidden right now. But, you know, what I do is I sculpted 3, I moved them all around, you know, so that there was no repetition in there. and then went back and added the individual details to kind of make them all look different so that it's not noticeable. So it saves time rather than sitting here and literally sculpting every single one of these by hand. So this is the side I was going to use for the cut, so I don't want to add any there. I have not that one yet. I mean, there's, the thing about like zBrush or even working in like Maya or stuff like that, there's really no one way to do anything. Really, it's just what works best for you depending on what you're doing and what like your skill level is. So that plays a lot into it as well. Kind of want to go with this a little bit here. Make sure we kind of finish that one off so that it doesn't just end weirdly like that. Sometimes you gotta fight with it a little bit, just when you have weird angles that are coming off. Thanks for the follow, Mobius. Come on, little area being a pain. That should look okay. Yeah, we look fine. And the Orbs Crack brush has a pretty strong influence based on where your camera is. So you can see how when I was dragging that over that, it wasn't really doing much, but as soon as I panned to my camera, I was able to cut into that corner a lot more. And I'm not going to worry about this pixelation, that'll get cleaned up. You know, the biggest thing is what does it look like when the camera's out here, right? A lot of times the camera's zoomed in super duper close, doesn't matter because you're not going to see that. It's so small that it's probably not going to be baked anyways. And then when we come in with our pinch brush, most of that's probably going to disappear anyways. Right, so when you're out here, probably where the character would actually be standing, you can't see any of that pixelation anyway, so it's not worth going in and fixing it. I used to be really bad with time management, like little things like that would have driven me nuts and I would spend, you know, hours upon hours trying to fix it. And then you wind up spending so much time on something that's so inconsequential that you lose time working on stuff that's actually, you know, gonna require a lot of time to spend on. You know, for your own project, might not be that big of a deal, but if you're working on a team or something like that, where you've got, you know, say a level designer that's waiting for your art because he needs to put in the level, and you're taking forever to clean stuff up, well, he's going to get pretty mad at you. Which is why when you actually look at, you know, art in actual games, especially things like MMOs where you've got these massive worlds, you'll notice a lot of issues. You'll notice, you know, weird UV seams, you'll notice stuff that doesn't look quite right, and that's because, well, they're rushing. Yeah, that's a good observation right there. Is especially when doing stuff like this, say, you know, environment art, it's really easy to overthink things. So if I'm doing, say, a slice through here, it's really easy to overthink the slice, and you kind of go, you don't like it, you undo it, you do it again, you don't like it, you undo it, you do it again, you don't like it, you undo it. You could spend 20-30 minutes doing that. And what winds up happening is if you do that too much, your model winds up looking artificial, because things in nature don't always follow a specific pattern. You know, there's lots of patterns in nature, but it's not always that way. And you want things to look natural, so if you overthink it, then what winds up happening is you make your mesh look fake. It looks man-made, you know, after a certain point. So things in nature are very, you know, unsymmetrical a lot of times. You know, stuff like this is going to break the way it breaks. I don't want to overthink the break. I'm just going to do it, start sculpting, and, you know, let my sort of brushes where they land dictate how everything's going to look. But yeah, it's a really good point, you know, just yeah, happy accidents is super important when it comes to stuff like this. Especially environment art. It's a little bit different for, say, something like, say you're modeling, you know, a gun for a game like Battlefield, where the gun looks one way in real life and you have to mirror that, then that's a little bit different. But for stuff like this, you know, yeah, it's... especially when I was doing, say, like, these sides over here, like, I didn't plan these gouges. It's just my brush hit harder there than it did up here, and I just went with it. Most of the time it works out, sometimes it doesn't. You know, you wind up, like, doing too much and it looks bad, but for the most part, you know, you kind of just roll with it. And you can see how that pixelation isn't even noticeable now with the noise and everything on it. But it's something I used to be super bad at. I remember, and I think I've told this story before, but I remember working on one of my very first environments. I was making high polys of literally everything. And I made a high poly of a metal torch holder. So it was this little holder that sat on the wall and would hold the torch. And I spent probably a day, working on the high poly, sculpting it, baking out the maps, texturing it, doing all this stuff. And then I put it in the engine, and it was so small that you couldn't actually see any of the detail that I had spent all that time working on. So I lost, a day's worth of time that I could have been actually spending focusing on something that really required that attention to detail. I think there's a way to multiple select, but I honestly don't know. I've never actually attempted to do it. Yeah, I mean, you could merge them and then Z-remesh them and project the details if you wanted to get them sort of done quicker. But I like sort of having the higher level of control over the individual blocks rather than doing something like that. And I mean, for something like the cracks too, you could always make your own custom brush from those cracks. if you wanted to, but yeah, I mean you could do if you wanted one that cut the whole way across or something like that. Which would probably make more sense in like a realistic fashion, but I'm kind of just doing this as, hey, this is interesting looking. Not really following a whole hell of a lot of logic with it. For this one I'm going to build out a whole environment. It's in the poly count link below. So it's going to be sort of like a game environment, but not actually used in a game. Yeah, Polygon's a great site. Yeah, especially, just for seeing what other people are doing. A lot of people are really willing to help if you get stuck with something or kind of point you in the right direction. And the critique and feedback that you can get on your stuff is really great too, really helpful. Especially over there, like somebody who's then giving you critique on something you've done might be, oh hey, it's the lead artist from Bungie or something like that. Which of course is intimidating in its own way, but really helpful. Yeah, ArtStation's a really great site for that stuff. Just getting, your stuff up in kind of I guess it could kind of be considered a sketchbook. A sketchbook that a whole bunch of people can see. Honestly, just like a blog spot is a really good thing too. I used to kind of run one, but now that I'm doing more of the Twitch and the YouTube stuff, I've kind of stopped because it was kind of just redundant. But, just having a blog spot that you kind of throw your work up onto is really good as well. And all my past videos are up on YouTube if you wanted to see any of the stuff I did to get to this point. It's kind of missing some of the initial stuff, like way back at the beginning, just because I didn't have this idea to, hey, let's live stream this until a couple days into the project. So there's some stuff missing, but most of it's there. Like all the rock sculpting, which uses a somewhat similar method to this. Yeah, Pinterest is an interesting thing. I actually use it quite a bit for concept pieces. So I'll find like, real life stuff or stuff that other people have done that's really good and, pin it and look back at it, reference it. It's a really good site. I think most people think it's just for pinning good looking food, but there's actually quite a bit you can do with it on an art side. Now I do stream on here pretty often. My schedule is below, so if you guys want to see this environment to completion, make sure to follow me on here. After I finish up this pillar, get that all done and into the environment, the next part will be the floor, which will follow somewhat of a similar design standard as this, but doing a modular floor that I can then tile together and make the whole flooring system out of. And that will go all underneath the pillar. Then we'll be working on some walls, a ceiling, some side pieces, a whole bunch of stuff. That's not good, that's probably gonna crash. Something with the the auto saves has been what's crashing it the most lately. I'm not really sure why. It's like if it starts to quick save and then I click, it just crashes ZBrush. And this concrete one that I'm using is actually from a downloadable pack that you can get. I'll grab the name of it real quick in case you want to download it. It's called zBrush Marble Damage. If you just Google that, you should actually find the pack. It comes with a whole ton of brushes that you can use that work really well on stone, concrete, brick, really anything that's rock based. Yeah, it's it's a really big download, which is surprising just for ZBrush brushes, but it's really cool. And I can show you some of the stuff it has in there. Yeah, there's a screenshot you can see of all the brushes, but they're really nice. So it's got like just load a couple of them here. So it's got like these pretty cool cracks already built in. So I think it's let's see. I think it was like these, so you can like click drag out cracks if you wanted to. It's got like these really big thick cracks. You can see how easy it is to just click and drag those in. Like so. You can see how the time difference between like that and that. It also has things like, let's see, so it's got some like more oddly shaped cracks in there. Oh, no problem, Mobius. Hope to see you again in the future. If you got any more questions, you know, feel free to message me, do whatever. Ask away. Also has these like these kinds of things if you want these like divots and sort of like pot marks kind of thrown in there, which I'll actually should have been adding as I was going along, but maybe we'll come back to that. You can kind of see how that adds a little bit in there. If I can find why this one's hidden, which one that is. Yeah, they could be useful for something like that, definitely. There's also a set called XMD, which I believe I have as well. Yeah, XMD. These are actually alphas, not brushes, but they have some pot mark brushes as well. I think it's called like Crete or something like that. So let's see if we can turn on one of these. For some reason, every time I try to just turn on a single subtool, it turns them all back on. Which isn't the best for an aging computer. Alright, there's our hidden one. Not sure why that was hidden to begin with. But yeah, if you're using ZBrush quite a bit, I definitely recommend spending some time downloading brushes, especially alphas. Alphas are really important to download. I kind of have a whole library that I use for various things. I tend to stay away from some of the more customized brushes. Like for instance, you'll notice I'm doing my own cracks instead of using these. And the reason for that is because when you have something like this that's been pre-built and that anybody can download, then they probably have somebody doing that and it's going to be customized to your studio. So that's a little bit different. Get these top bricks turned back on. You can see these ones are a little bit shorter, a little bit different pattern on them. So that's done. There's actually another set that goes on the bottom. It's a little bit funky when I get too much turned on here. You can see how that section actually looks. There's one more, let's find it. Right there. I just kind of rotate a lot, thinking about where, you know, a crack or something might be interesting. Maybe this one up here. I think this side has enough, so I won't do any on this side. So we'll take this one, we'll do our normal surface wear to it. Just a light box. The whole pillar is probably, if we're going off based on Unreal, which is kind of how I've done mostly everything, and I'm using the character from Unreal to get my scale. The character from Unreal is about 6 feet tall. So each of these bricks, I think the whole pillar is probably about 18 feet high. So each of these is probably maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, maybe less than that. They're not overly big, but they're, you know, they're decent enough size. You know, this is probably half. There's a top here that's not shown, but this is about the majority of the half of it, and then there's another half that goes underneath that. I do all my blockouts in Maya. I'm really bad at actually modeling things in zBrush. Like, I know there's some people that can model whole things in zBrush. That's not me. So I start with a base blockout in Maya where I imported the Unreal character. And then once I get that done with the scale and sizing that I like, I export that out and I use that as my base inside zBrush. But I mean, you could do it all within zBrush if you wanted to. I'm probably gonna have to turn some of these off. It's getting a little sluggish here. So let me turn those top ones off. That's a bottom one. If you're ever looking for a specific mesh, you can just alt-click it and it'll auto-select it in the subtool list. And I'm just about to crash zBrush because I just turned them all back on by clicking the wrong thing. And everyone's saying, oh no, it actually turned on. Yeah, scale is tricky in zBrush because you don't really have a good reference point, which is why I much prefer to do my blockouts in Maya using, you know, either a scale tool that I've created, you know, even if it's just like a cube that's the size that the character is going to be in the game I'm working on, or physically like exporting out a character from whatever engine it's going to go into and then using that as my reference point. Like for instance, you can get Unreal and then you can actually export the character model that they use for like their default stuff, and you can export that, import it into Maya and use that as your reference, because the default camera in Unreal is set to the head of that character. So it's if you don't play with the camera or anything, that's how tall it's gonna be. And I can't even like pan this model currently. But yeah, I mean, scale is a really important thing for, especially an environment artist, because you need to know that kind of up front. I've worked on projects before where it started as one thing and then became something else, and it's really hard to then fix the models to, you know, fit in with that new style. Like, if you go from, say, a third-person game to an isometric game, the scale between those is really different because of the camera, and it's really hard to make adjustments. I'm going to attempt to show you the whole pillar. Save it real quick before I crash zBrush on myself. And the 87 million was actually a mistake on my part. I didn't calculate correctly when I was doing the subdivisions on everything, and I went too high on some of them, and now I need to make that adjustment to get it back down. So there's pretty much the pillar and what it actually looks like when it's pieced back together. I haven't actually done the top section yet, but everything else is done. I'm gonna grab a drink real quick while this is processing itself, and I'll be right back. Yeah, it adds to it without them just being some random blocks thrown on top of everything. So I was going for like a very, like gothic temple style look with the whole thing. Visibility in zBrush is always something that trips me up. I'm trying to just turn on certain subtools and not actually turn all of them on. Alright, so I want that off. I should have turned everything off except the bricks, the piece right under the bricks and the piece on top, so let's see if I can actually show those. And actually move the camera. You can use Projection Master for that. I think I have a good tutorial for using that somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I can't find it for some reason, but yeah, I believe Projection Master will do that, where it will apply it to the whole mesh instead. Definitely need to upgrade my 660 at some point. So this side doesn't have too many cracks, so I'll probably look at adding a small one, maybe up on this side. Whenever it's done losing its mind. I'm gonna hide that bottom piece real quick. Take some of the strain off of it a little. This will be the last one up top that I add any cracks to. It's actually the last one up top that even needs to get done. I was just testing something real quick, ignore me. Let's see, what would be an interesting one for this? Of course now it's screwed all my stuff up. And of course you don't have to use the pinch brush if you don't want to. I just like to because it kind of mixes it up a little bit and kind of closes that crack up just to look a little bit more realistic. Alright, so that whole top is now done. I think we just have a couple more on the bottom and that's going to be about it. So let's see, so we've got these three, this one, and this one. So we've got this whole bottom section to do. I think this side's fine on cuts, so I'm gonna just do this one quick. So you can see how quick when you don't add those cracks and how quick that actually is. It's pretty fast to get just that sort of roughness on it. And it adds a lot to the piece. So I think there's only a couple more. That one's done, that one's done. We get this one over here. I have to keep reminding myself which side I'm going to be cutting the UVs on. This side will be fine here, so I don't want to put any cuts on this. So maybe one on this bottom one here. ZBrush loses its mind while I try rotating it. So probably crack. Let's see. Yeah, I think this one will work. I'm just gonna do one straight down because we haven't done really anything like that yet. You know, I kind of want each one to be unique and not look like any others, so kind of do a little bit of a different pattern on each one. So I think that's it for cracks. I think I'm just going to finish up the surface on the rest of them. And not worry too much about cracks. I think we have enough on here to get the point across. There's enough variation on the surfaces to make it interesting. What shit? Talking about the music or what I'm sculpting? Alright, so I think we got the blocks all done. Of course, there's always lots more we could do, but I think that's going to do well for what we're looking at. I've been streaming for about 4 hours now, so I think I am going to call it a day. I'm actually over what normally I would be for my schedule. I thank you all for tuning in today. Hopefully you learned something, and I hope I was able to answer your questions that you had. Like always, you can check out my YouTube channel for any of the past videos leading up to what I've done today. You can look at the poly count link to see the whole project that's being worked on. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I do thank you for tuning in. You can find my schedule below. I try to stick to it as much as possible, but the joys of real life sometimes get in the way, so I might miss a night here and there. I will be back hopefully tomorrow, if not then a Monday night streaming again. I hope you guys will tune in, and thanks for watching.